It's why my stuff is more accurate. I have a real reason to get it right. I am in community with these people. They're not just sources. Some of them are friends. Some of them are people I've known for years.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
On your writing more broadly, I'm interested in, you said that you felt you kind of transitioned into writing from being a union organizer. What union did you come from, and then what made you feel like writing would be, make better use of your talents than being a union organizer, and what is the kind of the thing that drives you in your job as you're writing articles? What are you, what is the thing that you're wanting to do in the world, basically, through your writing?
Easy question, huh? So I'll give you the honest answer to part one of that, which is I was a grad student at Northeastern University in Boston in a PhD program. And of course, I came out of like the anti-police brutality movement, Occupy. Like I was very much a far left activist, but I had no union experience, which of course, as we know, is not that uncommon in America at this point. Of course, though, I was a natural recruit. The minute someone wanted to organize grad students, I was there for like the first conversation about it. And we did that. And towards that end, very early on, our adjuncts were fighting for a first contract. Northeastern administration was like stonewalling. It was terrible. Adjuncts almost had to strike to get a contract. And my idea was, okay, I'm going to write an article about their fight as an excuse to do one-on-ones with them. Like I was not on staff, no union experience. I was like, this is a good way how do you approach a stranger without raising any suspicions? And so that's what I did. That was the first article I ever wrote. It was in The Nation. And it built ties, right? It built both personal ties. I had all their numbers when we needed it going forward, and also goodwill. The adjuncts saw that one of the grad union leaders, once we went public, had already backed them. And so it really helped. And so I totally just fell into it. I thought I was doing like this funny, like spy operative move of like, this will be the real reason I'm writing this. But then apparently it was a slippery slope because I think I lasted 3 years in the program and then I dropped out to work at Jacobin. And so I basically just learned to write along the way. I'm sort of joking when I say I'm like a better writer than organizer. I would like to think I would be a very good organizer. And I guess I've been doing it for the past month a fair amount. But I just realized I'd rather, be able to intervene and make a difference in the world. And anyway, the union, I meant to open with this. It was UAW. And after, I believe, a 7-year fight last month, the workers finally got to vote on whether they wanted to unionize. And the bargaining unit was like 3,000 people. And our original organizing committee, who had not spoken in years, many of us, just naturally, because it's been so long, reconvened. We got a WhatsApp group going. We watched the results come in. 97% in favor of unionizing.
Wow. So, that is awesome.
And it was so great. It was during the UAW strike. And, on one of Sean Fain's like morning updates or whatever the next day, he opened by being like, first of all, I just want to thank, we got a huge new bargaining unit. These grad students had to deal with like such employer obfuscation, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we're all like, yes, amazing. So I'm part of the working class that I write about. I'm very open about that. And so to without going on a big monologue to your second point, I think I hate the phrase, tell workers stories, but I want to use my platform and skills to, and commitment as a partisan of working class people, rather than as just a regular journalist. I want to be able to be the person who can help get strategic ideas and messages and updates across the country and across workers and unions, be that kind of middle person who can help people kind of take a pause and reflect on what's going on. And I just see my role as being part of the class, right? I often reference the Communist Party of America at, its height as far as this stuff in, the 20s or 30s. There was an entire wing of cultural workers who not just, it wasn't that they were producing just like party papers, but also they did use their skills. You know, there were paintings and movies and all sorts of things being done by communists and fellow travelers. And that's basically how I think of myself, as one part of that. And it's really interesting. I was talking about this because of that award with some other journalists. And I always joke that no matter how much my writing is reporting rather than commentary, when I write for a mainstream publication, it's always labeled opinion, because they just do not view me as capable of being a reporter. And I get that it is unusual to be a serious reporter. There, no offense to my colleagues, but there are many like pundits and hot takers on the left. Right. And so it is unusual. But at the same time, my argument is it's why my stuff is more accurate. Like I have a real reason to get it right. Like I'm really tied to people figuring out where the mistakes were. And also I am in community with these people. They're not just sources. Some of them are friends. Some of them are people I've known for years. So I'm always like, you guys are suckers. Like that's why a socialist would be better sourced and be better informed. But nobody sees it that way in the mainstream. They're lost.
Yeah, well, not only their loss, but the entire public that consumes the mainstream media as well, because they are being they're being informed by these people who try to pretend to have like a view from nowhere, and this neutrality is objectivity, and that bias is bad, and it's bad to admit to it, and they don't have it, and so therefore their news is better, and the way that they're reporting is better, and so it's definitely their loss in that they are losing losing out on good employees and good people, but it's also very much the public's loss, because how much better would the US be if our media better reflected the working class?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to say, without ranting, I want to say that when we think about the public thing, this is sort of what I say when I'm talking to like a reader who's asking why is the mainstream media's coverage so bad. First of all, I want to say there are a few good mainstream journalists, and that's despite, not because of all the stuff they're around in the mainstream media,
right.
But fundamentally, and I'm not the first to say this by any means, there's a great book about it called No Longer Newsworthy by some academic, I can't remember his name. But, the mainstream papers, New York Times especially, also Washington Post, they made a concrete business decision, sometime in the 20th century, that to the extent they served the working class, that they wrote for the working class, thought of it as their audience, their reporters were of it. It was like a grubby job. It was not like an Ivy League job to be a reporter. They made a decision to target high-income markets and only speak to those with power. You see, their advertising changed, and so did their coverage of labor. Because if you imagine your audience is the boss instead of the worker, and you are right when you're writing for a mainstream paper, it's not your fault, but you are writing for the rich. That will inform both your own understanding of what's going on and certainly the way you're going to describe it in your articles. And add to that, almost all these reporters and journalists come from that class too now, for reasons that we don't have to go into or might be obvious to people. Everyone knows that now, certainly at the national level, media is this very elite circle. So these people also don't come from that class. Their friends are not of that class. Their parents are not of that class. They actually, even if they mean well, they have so much they have to learn because they're not immersed in it. So it's a miracle when they're good at this coverage. I really mean that. The ones that are good, I really appreciate, because I can only imagine how much reading they had to do.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
To figure out what a strike was. So I just want to say it's not if only this were different. It's there's real decisions that are made by the capitalist press that results in this happening this way.
Absolutely. And, there's a certain extent to which I think in local media, there's a bit of a reversion to maybe reporting, even if it's not perceived that way, but certainly as far as the income, we're reporting being a lower class, working class type job. I've talked to reporters here at local media in Alabama, and it is insane how little they make and how much they have to produce, and And then, like you said, they are being directed kind of not to challenge power. And so even the ones that are sympathetic, they have to kind of, hide a little bit, be in the closet kind of about their views and try to, say things that, in certain ways that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. And I know that Adam has some comments on that as well, but I wanted to mention, you said the word, you were talking about the public, I was talking about the public, and when you said it, it reminded me that I wrote an article for Jacobin years ago, and Micah, I think it was Micah, changed, and this must be a style guide in Jacobin, but I had written taxpayer or tax dollars, and he changed it to public and public funds, and so that has been a change in my writing. I have retired the word taxpayer and introduced the word public. So,
Adam, you had comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things. I mean, what you're talking about with the working class representation in media is so true, and it's so complex. There's so many layers to it, between the class background of the reporters to, the institutional pressures and just the money involved and the deliberate choices made. But something that really resonated with me was your story, and I appreciate you sharing that and just kind of shedding some light on your background and journey, because it definitely resonated, and Jacob and I, can relate to it because, we are activists and organizers who do this little media thing on the side as this grassroots project. It gives us a great opportunity to connect with people such as yourself. The amazing people who've been coming on this live stream, the people we talk to every weekend, from rank and file workers to reporters and scholars and historians and, union leaders. And so, I really appreciate the position that you're in, and appreciate the work that you're doing. We're doing something like it. On a much smaller scale here in Alabama, and, trying to play our small part. But I think that's what we all have to find our ways to contribute. We all have talents. We all have skills. Not all of us are writers. Not all of us are comfortable in front of a microphone. Not all of us can do every single thing, but all of us can do something. And I think finding what that is and connecting with the right people is just so huge, and that's just what I would encourage folks to do. And also your words about your interview with Boots and talking about the blacklist, I think that's really important as well. That you have to be able to sleep at night, and I think. I have certainly encountered personal difficulties for that kind of thing, and a lot of people listening have too. It's a valid concern, it's a valid fear, but you do have to be able to sleep at night. You have to have principles. We have to be better than the other side, and so just really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you joining us and trying to help us with this crazy idea of being on the air for 32 hours to raise money for striking Southern workers. It means.
Can I say before you kick me off, just two things in response to that?
You got as much time as you want. Yeah.
No, I'm going to get off soon. I'm so tired. But just two things. One, it's part of the power of unions, right? That you don't need to do this alone. It's good. I would encourage people, just like Boots was in that quote, and Boots was doing by saying in that interview that he backs BDS, to also just take a stand if you feel so moved and you want it. I always say, I might be unemployable. I might have some enemies, but at least I can sleep at night. That's a totally fair thing. But also, talk to your coworkers, do it together. Like, I'm glad that my local now has put out, actually it was the National News Guild that put the statement about the war. It's like, sometimes you don't want to put yourself at risk. And actually, it's not the most effective thing to say something alone and then get fired. And because both you're now broke, and then your coworkers are like, well, hell, I'm never opening my mouth.
Right.
And so look to your friends and comrades. And, it's been very heartening just to bring it back to the Israel-Palestine stuff. I mean, that march in D.C. was way over 100,000 people. Like, you're not alone. And then the last thing I want to say, and this seems like an appropriate closing, is like you said, what you guys are doing is a much smaller scale than me. But it's like, I've written about this before, back when we had an actual fighting labor movement with diverse politics, meaning there were like radicals really in there, and strong unions and lots more members than we have now. There was an entire ecosystem of labor press, right? There were direct union papers, there were local things, there were like, the Reform Caucus papers, then there were the labor reporters at the lefty places, and then there were the ones at the New York Times. Like, all of this stuff actually is very important. And we have completely lost, I've never experienced that. I was not alive when there was like a flourishing ecosystem of labor reporting. But you need that. Like, you need every level of local to national to global. And so I think, what you guys do is incredibly important. You know more details about your actual communities than I could ever possibly know, because I'm writing about all random places all around the country. It's impossible. So everybody relies on each other here, I think. It's very important to say.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, certainly as a validation of our project, but as but generally, it is helpful to have people who are kind of day in, day out. We're not day in, day out reporting, but we are on the ground here, and we have connections here in North Alabama and in Alabama that people outside of here wouldn't have. And so, I have given sources to people in national media before, and like that connection, from somebody who is wanting to write a piece for The Nation or, the Washington Post to a worker in Alabama wouldn't exist, right, if we weren't here. And so that is a really cool thing. And the destruction of labor media has really been a detriment to working people. And it is amazing how widespread it was. I was doing some research on the Knights of Labor, and there was a local Knights of Labor paper in Escambia County, Alabama, in like the 1890s.
That rules. See, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it is so cool, and there's and if there are archival versions of that paper, and so at sometime when I have time, I would like to just go through and read all of the copies of the I can't remember what it was called now. I'm gonna have to find it again, but it was something really cool, obviously, because it was a labor newspaper from the 19th century. So one day I want to read all of it, because I'm sure there's some really cool stuff there. But yeah, so hopefully we kind of operate in that tradition and we do it justice. So, Alex Press, award-winning journalist from Jacobin magazine. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. All right, good luck.
All right, appreciate it.
Bye.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.